in these children is adaptability. Because the truth is, you don't even know, like you get a phone today, it's obsolete the next day. So it's changing so fast. And if it's changing that fast, then we as teachers need to be adaptable. See how quickly schools adapted when we had the pandemic, and see how slowly some adjusted and some couldn't. The difference is in the cognitive structure that has been laid in the minds of the teachers and the children. So for us to survive in this whole world of automation and everything, the cognitive capacities of children, teachers who work with them, and parents need to be on a higher plane. That's why in teaching these days, we now have things like higher order thinking, Bloom's taxonomy, questioning patterns that draw out critical thinking and problem-solving skills in children. So like the example we had, it's not what is 2 plus 2. It's how do I make 4? Because once we start to move into this content, so yes, content can't be changed yet. I know there is advocacy for revolution in education, but when is that going to happen? So what we can then do is to tweak the content that we have to draw out skills from that content. So it's not about curriculum. This is the content. But as teachers and as schools, once I see the content, what life skills can be drawn out of this content? So it's KSV, knowledge, skills, and a sense of judgment, which I'm going to round up with. And so our content needs to be relevant. So even if you're teaching with content that looks like, oh, this is old school, why are we teaching this? I really don't even know why. Then you can extend it. So you can extend your teaching into life applicable situations that those children can relate with. Remember, I already said that you can't reach these children as a parent or as a teacher if you're not connecting with them. You need to know what goes on in the world. You need to know the books they read. You need to know about, I don't know what this thing is now, anime, this Japanese thing going on lately, you know. So when you understand those things, you're able to connect with these children and reach them. And so we're talking about curriculum content, and we're also talking about, so we need new tools of thinking to birth the mental structures that are required. So what's happening now is that, yes, the machines are there, technology is there, but when these machines have analyzed the data, who is going to infer logic? Humans, still. So Alexa couldn't function because a human hasn't programmed it to function in more other capacities in that home. So what we're saying now is that yes, automation and the future of work is there. Our children need to adapt. They need to gain skills to know that it's not about, in the 19th century, we were created for industrial revolution. So learning was about processes. But now it's about creativity. And I dare say now that for us in Africa and a country like Nigeria, we are moving into makers. We are moving into entrepreneurial mindsets where creativity is built. So it's no longer about I'm done with school, and that is where we connect. So I am not from a privileged home. I don't go to a top-notch private school, and I don't get a lot of these things. Because at the end of the day, in this same future of work, we're talking about skills. So what do? I go for vocation. I know how to bake. I know how to cook. I know how to do your makeup. I'm a Nigerian, the most populous black nation in the world. I've got markets to sell my goods. So at the end of the day, we meet. End of the day, we meet. So if our own children sit in the schools without gaining skills, the ones on the streets who do not have access to sophisticated education are picking up skills. So internship and mentorship then become a very critical aspect where you're preparing your children for the world of work, where they go to pick up vacation jobs. In our own school is a major prerequisite. You're done with year 6. Within that term, it's 1 week, you go to the younger classes, you teach. We had something so mind-blowing this week, I was almost in tears. We had an end-of-year project, and then we told the children, part of your project from years 4 to 8 would be that you create your own company. For years 1 to 3, it was about creating your own country, your imaginary country. Give us the map. And for some of the children, I saw them draw the map and put the map keys. Some actually had the 4 cardinal points around their maps. And I went, okay, there's some sort of conversion going on here. And you need to see how these children were thinking. And those in the panel were asking those children questions like adults. Why did you decide that your type of ownership should be partnership? And then you need to hear what they were saying. So what's the vision? Why did you choose this color as your logo? Why are these the core values of your organization? And that's where we're going to. So skills is what we're talking about here, that the children gain these things so that they're able to function in the world of work. We already know that in the UK now, you already have the freelance economy, and that is project-based. So we're talking about the flipped classroom, the phenomenon-based learning. That is highly multidisciplinary. It's not subject-based. So you're working on a project, and it's across all skills from the children, the project-based learning, the competencies. And as children, what are their core competencies? And these are the things that we nurture in our children. Next slide, please. So in all of this project-based learning, phenomenon-based learning, flipped classroom, blended classroom, all of that, we need to strike a balance. It's important that we strike that balance. It's a fast-moving world of innovation, of inventions, and high cognitive processes. But it's important as parents and as schools that we merge the humanity and the divinity of our children. That we raise children. In fact, once I just saw Mr. Kevin's slides, I was just like, oh, okay, we're tying this thing all up together at the end of the day. So there has to be a balance. We need to instill values such as compassion, empathy, yes, diligence, resilience, perseverance, grit. We need to teach our children these things. And so one of the things we tell the parents is that when we give your children homework, it isn't as much of the homework as the skills that we want to draw from, getting them to get those things done and turn them in at the due date. It's diligence. It's time management skills. So it isn't really about the homework. It isn't about the projects. If I give your child this project, some parents just say that, oh, no, you're overloading the children. And then the parents went, like the same projects we had in our school, and the parents were like, when we saw what you asked the children to do, we thought, would they be able to? I left my child, and he was thinking. I said, that's it. What we want to get out of the children is creativity. Let them think. We want to bring out originality out of the children, authenticity. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. These are my innate capacities and skills. And these are the things that I can do. And as parents, as teachers, we are beside them to guide them. Saxophone, go. Violinist, go. Baker, I release you. Architect, move. Doctor, move. Were they guided? Yes. And so we're going to create that balance of centeredness, of mindfulness, and of groundedness in our children. The next slide, please. And so we know the wheel of life. What we're talking about today, the cognitive processes, is just one out of so many parts of a human's life. You have the mental, which has to do with contribution. It has to do with growth in career, in your mental structures through training, wealth, health, relationships. We're talking about your spiritual relationships, connection, family, and all of that. And so altogether, we're raising a total child. And so this is a call to us as school leaders to cascade these things down to the teachers and to the children, and to let the children know. I worry for those in the low-income families, but I worry more for those in higher socioeconomic classes. Because if these things are not converted to skills, and these are skills that these children literally pick up on the streets as they play. They know how to network. They know how to work collaboratively. You just see them on someone's farm. They are already together, trying to gather the wood, create something. But our own children are just loners. Me, myself, and I, and myself only. And then you get on a job, and then that's a challenge. And then to work with other people collaboratively is a problem. And so you ask the children, they know a lot. They know. But what can you do with what you know? And these are the questions that we need to start to ask our children. And the last part of it is that as school systems and as parents, we're going to bequeath two things. The last slide, please, to our children. So, we're going to give them wings to show the children what they can become. As teachers, we're going to nurture their innate capacities and potentials. And we're going to give them roots to remind them of where they're from, so that they're able to contribute to their world, meaningful to their world, and lead a fulfilled life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Oyenuga. Wow. That's very insightful. Thank you very much. Okay, without much ado, we would like to invite the next speaker. He's a management consultant, and he's going to tell us how employable we are. Are you ready to do an appraisal for yourself now? So it's going to be like a sort of appraisal for us. How employable will you be in the nearest future? Okay? So that's what he's coming here to discuss with us. And how to leverage on technology to gain visibility. Those are the things he's going to talk about. So please, media, can you reel the video to welcome in the next speaker?
And an MBA from the Obafemi Awolowo University. Tolu Oladipo has over 2 decades of post-graduation experience in people management, retail banking, and executive management. Various senior positions he has held include HR Manager, Stanbic IBTC, Divisional Head, Personal Banking, Stanbic IBTC, Head Sales and Distribution, Liberty Health Proprietary, THT Nigeria, Chief Executive Officer, Zuma HMO, International Partner, Catanon Executive Recruitment, Madrid, Country Manager, Mall for Africa, Head Human Resources, News Central Media Limited. Tolu is currently a partner with Viral Business Consulting, providing local and international clients with advisory services across multiple areas of expertise including management advisory, HR, and people advisory, financial services, and strategy. Please welcome Tolu Oladipo for his session.
Good. Is it still morning? Good morning, all. I feel like, I've just been called to give the vote of thanks, because the quality of what we've been getting from the previous speakers very interesting. And I will actually be going back to listen to some of these things in detail to absorb it. First of all, I want to say thank you to the board and the management of Safe Hand School for this opportunity, and to thank my fellow panelists. This has been very interesting. I want to say that I'm not going to be as nice as they have been. Because, first of all, yes, I consider myself an educator. Although most of my teaching, coaching has to do with adults, usually in the corporate setting. But I want to go a little bit beyond what they are saying. And please let me apologize in advance because I may give some of us sleepless nights, and I may cause some discomfort because I'm going to interrogate a little bit of some of the assumptions that we make as educators. So I've been asked to speak about employability and skill sets that employers look out for, and to talk through talent acquisition and leveraging on networking platforms, and the essential requirements for recruiters and job seekers with regards to talent acquisition. So in short, after you, the educators, have done the magic, what happens at the end of the day to children? So that's what I will be talking a little bit about. The question, are robots taking our jobs? Robots can provide and perform quite a lot of complex tasks, especially with the rise of concepts like artificial intelligence, machine learning, that sort of thing. The conventional wisdom is that there are certain jobs that we're doing right now. For example, jobs that require emotion, like empathy, that robots cannot do. But we'll play a clip right now to show us some interesting things. If the clip is ready, please roll it. And also to interrogate some of these assumptions.
My father tried to teach me human emotions. They are difficult.
You mean you're a designer?
Yes.
So why'd you murder him?
I did not murder Dr. Lanning.
Want to explain why you were hiding at the crime scene?
I was frightened.
Robots don't feel fear. They don't feel anything. They don't get hungry, they don't sleep.
I do. I have even had dreams.
Human beings have dreams. Even dogs have dreams, but not you. You are just a machine. An imitation of life. Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece?
Can you?
I think you murdered him because he was teaching you to simulate emotions, and things got out of control.
I did not murder him.
But emotions don't seem like a very useful simulation for a robot.
I did not murder him.
What the hell, I don't want my toaster or my vacuum cleaner appearing emotional.
I did not murder him!
That one's called anger. Ever simulate anger before? Answer me, Canner!
My name is Sonny.
So we're naming you now. That why you murdered him? He made you angry?
Dr. Lanning killed himself. I don't know why he wanted to die. I thought he was happy.
Apologies, it appears the audio was not too clear. But I'm sure you could see from the clip that the robot was giving responses that were emotional to the questions. And he was even being snide. Unfortunately, we couldn't hear because the interrogator was asking, can a machine write a symphony? Can you do a painting? And the robot replied, can you? Okay? So the robot was using sarcasm and was displaying emotions. Now, the point I'm trying to make is we try to comfort ourselves to say, look, there are things involving emotion and empathy and so on that robots cannot do. The truth of the matter is robots can simulate even these things. They can do it very well, and they're getting better and better all the time. Pastor Edbert was talking about Alexa. Alexa provides a trove of data because as millions of people are interacting with Alexa, Alexa is using machine learning to get better at giving responses. So let us make no mistake about this. Every single thing that we're doing in the classroom, robots can and will be able to do them. Every single thing. Think of whatever it is. They can video record emotional responses from a child, and they can react to it in an appropriate fashion based on their programming. So let us not deceive ourselves and think that because we have emotions, we can get away with things. The truth of the matter, the short answer, are robots taking our jobs? The short answer is yes. Now, as educators and parents, we face a formidable task, and I think our previous panelists have addressed this very eloquently. There is this philosopher and physicist called Bertrand Russell. And he made an interesting statement once. He said, men are born ignorant, not stupid. They are made stupid by education. The cynicism he was expressing is that children by nature are they're creative, they're inquisitive, but then we now box them into the educational box. And it kills a lot of these innate responses that children have to the environment. So the scope of my address is around employers at the end of the day. Once these students have gone through the educational sector, what are they looking for? But I will expand it a little bit because, like has been alluded to by some of the previous speakers, it's not only about employers. We also have to be cognizant of the fact that we are preparing entrepreneurs for the market. Now, from the perspective of educators, one of the primary tools we use is testing. So testing will tell us how well have students grasped the subject matter. Testing is actually statistically a reasonably good predictor of future earnings. For very many corporate organizations, they use testing to select new entrants into their organization. And as we all know, Nigerian parents like high test scores. And as the major stakeholder in the educational sector, we cannot ignore that. So, conventional wisdom is that as educators, we need to focus on achieving high test scores. Or should we? So let us interrogate a little bit the utility of testing. But let's be clear that testing is not going to go away, unfortunately. But I would like to say this, and I think some of us already have that knowledge. And I'm sure we've all seen this scenario. I remember when we were in university, we had this chap. So what do we do as educators? Have the robots won? Are we doomed? Do we no longer have jobs in the future? Now, there are certain aspects that have to do with human nature that separate us as human beings from all other things, including robots. And I think these are some of the things we need to look at, and some of the other panelists have touched on them. But I want to dig a little bit deeper around that, particularly around future job prospects and that sort of thing. And there are certain things we need to look at as educators in order to prepare our students for this unknown future. I will talk about the book of Genesis. I can see Pastor Edbert looking at me. Lou is talking about Genesis. He's not even waiting for the robots to collect my job. Next thing, I will be asking for the collection basket. Well, the book of Genesis, we learned the story about Adam and Eve. And I refer to this ancient text because it gives us some fundamental insights into human nature. And we learn about Adam and Eve and about the story of the fruit and all that. But there are three things from this story that help us define what human beings are. Sorry, I actually asked for permission to take a little bit extra time, so my talk will be a little bit longer. Apologies for that. There are three things to my mind, based on my understanding of these ancient texts, that tell us about human nature and differentiate us from not just robots, any other living thing and non-living thing. The first thing, when God created Adam and Eve, he gave them an instruction, don't eat. But in order for that instruction to make sense, he gave them something else, which is called free will. Free will. Robots will never have free will, by definition. The second thing is, and it was an outcome of actually disobeying and using that free will in a certain way, is they had the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge of good and evil. Robots will never have the knowledge of good and evil. Never. The third thing, which ties to the other two things, is relationship. Okay? They had a relationship with each other, obviously, Adam and Eve, and they had a relationship with God, which was affected by their exercise of their free will. Now, these three things, especially as they interrelate to each other, cannot be simulated by robots. So, back to our employers and our companies. What do companies actually want? Yes, companies want employees with high IQ. Now, a lot of companies are still testing. They will still do some sort of testing. And the testing is around IQ to a large extent. So it's a proxy for IQ. But the interesting thing is that the companies that actually look at the data, and the reason they look at the data, the hiring data, is to see what recruitment process brings out the best workers. So your top tech companies, your Apples, your Googles, and so on, and even your top consulting companies, international consulting, Ernst & Young, PwC, KPMG, and so on, they have stopped asking or, or shortlisting only candidates that have first class and good 2-1. That used to be the norm. First class, good 2-1. Everybody else good. No, because they've realized that some people come in with a third class and they outperform the so-called high flyers. In my own personal experience, I've done recruitment, I've hired, people up to general manager level, even in banks and so on and so forth, as well as the entry-level people. And I have been amazed that I'm having conversation with clearly bright young people who have a first-class degree, but I know I cannot hire them. Okay? So, there is something else that employers look at, and it's called various terms, and it comprises various aspects of what we've talked about. In summary, it's often called emotional intelligence. I'll give you a story about my own career. I joined the banking sector in human resources. I worked in HR in various banks until I became manager in human resources at Stanbic IBTC. So I was in HR supporting the retail division. And the executive director then was a South African gentleman. And one day he called me into his office and he said, Tolu, I know you're in HR, but I want you to join my team in retail. And I said, Jack, I have never in my life put a credit together. I've been an HR person all my career. Jack says, the job is about managing people, which you are very good at. The banking, I can teach you. And that is exactly what he did. And I eventually became divisional head of personal banking. Now, what this story is trying to illustrate is that teachable skills, employers are not too worried about it. They can always teach it. It is the other skills, the so-called soft skills, are far more important to many employers these days. Companies, I've been seeing in the marketplace right now, are increasingly using technology in the recruitment process. Okay? I was looking at one. They were very particular about IQ. So they had this aptitude test. I tried the test. I passed, but I would not meet the cutoff, which was you need to score like 99% or something. And I know that's not going to happen. But what I also found interesting was that they had fully applied the concept of digital nomads, which somebody mentioned here. They don't care where in the world you are. Once you meet their criteria, they will hire you, you work from home. And I knew from inside information their pay range was starting from around $200,000 a year. Okay, so the workplace, technology is already being deployed. But the interesting thing is that, and I know my brief, LinkedIn was mentioned. LinkedIn is actually far behind the curve. There are a lot of new technology platforms in recruitment coming up, and they understand how to get the right people, and they know what they're looking for, and they have ways of assessing emotional intelligence using technology. So now, entrepreneurs, a lot of the people we are educating now are going to go into what is called the gig economy. Okay? They will be doing business for themselves. They will not be working for an employer. So, the interesting thing is because of the decentralization of information now, it is the market that determines what is important and what is not. So, you have people who are on the internet doing tutorials of makeup, and they're earning more money than anybody in this room. because that is what the market wants. Right? There are companies who even hire such people. So that's what you call off-balance sheet employees. They're not on the company payroll. They are consultants doing various things. Now, I'm sure, well, some of us here might have heard of the Kardashians, for example. It is clear from the little that I've heard about them that none of them did very well in school. And like I said, all of them are making more money than anybody in this room. Okay, so it's a market that determines what is happening. And the majority of people, I suspect, that we are currently teaching are going to go into that gig economy. So I think it's important that there are certain skills we need to teach all students regarding entrepreneurship. Things like contract laws. Things like how to register a business. We do a partnership, which clearly some schools are already doing. Do you partnership? Do you do a limited liability company? Do you do, and so on and so forth. What about financial management? How do you take a loan? What about taxation, negotiation, labor laws? We need to be preparing our kids around this. Educators, we are preparing students for a future that is fundamentally unknowable. Nevertheless, there are certain things, certain skills we need to give them. Does anybody here know what a cyclo-styling machine is? Mr. Donnelly, you're not allowed to answer. Pastor Edbert, you're not allowed to answer. It is the precursor of a photocopier. In those days, before the electronic age, you would type something on a stencil, put it in this machine, and then roll it, and it will produce duplicates. And when I was a young child, I used to go to my dad's office because I was fascinated by this machine, this cyclo-styling machine. It produced perfect duplicates. Now imagine, thinking back, I can imagine a cyclo-styling engineer who does repairs for this machine. Because in the city, there will be hundreds of companies who have them. And they're very expensive. So you're not going to buy a new one when something goes wrong. And these engineers would have been making top dollar. Now imagine if somebody at that time decided, I want my child to become a cyclo-styling engineer. Very few people in this room have even heard about it. So let me make a prediction. This was 40 years ago. In the next 40 years, all the main technologies you are working with are no longer going to exist. Okay? Zoom is not going to exist. Twitter is not going to exist. All right? So we're preparing them for a future that is fundamentally unknowable. However, we need to inculcate this. There's one final thing we need to inculcate, which has not been mentioned at all in this session, which there's an interesting interaction with robots and technology that we need to think about, and that is power. Probably not the kind of power that comes to mind. There was this joke about in a certain country, they used to advertise a lot of jobs, and they found that Nigerians were always getting these jobs. So the owners of the company said, look, we want to have a dinner, invite candidates, but we want to make sure that there are no Nigerians there. So what do you do? So the consultant said, don't worry, don't worry. So they were having dinner in the night. As things were going along, somebody went and switched off all the lights. Then, after 2 minutes, they switched them back up. And 4 people shouted, Up Nepa! I said, okay, there are 4 Nigerians in the room. No, that's not the type of power I'm talking about. I'm talking about political power, right? We need to also teach our children about democratic values. Unfortunately, most schools, when it comes to things like selecting prefects and that sort of thing, the school wants to select for good reason. You don't want the naughty children leading everybody else. But I want to challenge us, for example. Let us start inculcating these values. Let them have a campaign. Let them have a manifesto. Let them vote. Let them start inculcating these values from early on. Because we need to preserve democracy. Democracy is not a great system of government, but it's the best that we have. It is better than all the others. It is expensive, it is cumbersome, it involves debate and negotiation. But humans will never willingly cede political power to robots. Nobody is going to vote for a robot now in the future. It is possible that somebody will use robots to take power from people. And that is why we need to include democracy in whatever we're teaching. Last few seconds, let me just run a quick recap. Yes, we must continue providing the best possible teaching. Focus on high test scores until testing disappears. And I believe it will. Basic management and entrepreneurial skills should be universal and compulsory for our children. We must inculcate the God-given right to choose, i.e., free will, and also understand the consequences of that free will. We must inculcate the value of integrity, that is, the knowledge of good and evil. And we must teach students to fight for the value of democracy. These things should always survive the future, robots or no robots. Thank you.
Some of us are not clapping. Some of us are not clapping. We're not clapping. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I wanted to read what on the screen. So it's time for the
Question and answer.
question and answer segment. And I think we have a question. And subsequently, other questions, the individuals will just go to the microphones to your various house and just say them. Then we'll call out the panelists that will simply answer them immediately. So we have one.
So we are going to take one question from the online, and then if you have questions, just indicate. We will take just 5 questions because of our time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to...
So one online, then four here. So we'll go the first one.
Okay, so I guess this question goes to Mrs. Victoria. It has to do with educational activism. So the person is asking, oh, we have 2 already.
2, okay.
Okay, so what work is being done to ensure that the Ministry of Education in Nigeria sees and the need to overhaul the system to at least catch up with global best practices in education? You have your mics with you. You don't need to stand up. You can just answer the question from your seat. Yes, there is a microphone beside you. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. As one of the panelists, Mrs. Ronke, as Mrs. Oyenuga pointed out, as private schools, we always have to be cognizant and thinking about, access to education and equality. But the very premise behind educational activism is that it is not a government movement. Okay. So the very premise behind educational activism is that it's people initiated. It starts from the people. when it's bottom up as opposed to top down in the approach, then the belief is that it will have much stronger staying power. So it might seem like nothing is being done on the governmental level. But my belief, and I think this has been seen, at least with the example, not just from Madame Moret, but also around the world in Brazil, you've seen this in Finland, you've seen this. Once there starts to be the environment for discourse, once there starts to be ideas that become part of a cogent framework, which may eventually become a curriculum in the case of the International Baccalaureate, or maybe just a system, as in the case of Finland. The whole idea is that with educational activism, the first place to start is with the people, because the people are the ones that will be most affected. Once dialogue like this happens and that environment for ideas to be fostered, to be put together into concrete frameworks, then the government starts to see the need. At the end of the day, that's the whole premise behind democratic ideals. We, the people, have to begin the work and then move the government through lobbyist action, through pressure groups to see that this is important to us.
Thank you, ma'am. So the revolution has to start within the education system. Okay, so the second question is to Mr. Tolu. Is asking, this person is asking, how do you test emotional intelligence as an employer?
Okay, that's a very good question. There are a number of things that you can test, and in human resources, we use a lot of what are called psychometric tools. So, psychometric tools, first of all, will tell you a bit about the personality, because employers are usually interested in that. And there's no good or bad or right or wrong personality. Some people are extroverted, some people are introverted. As for example, you don't want to put an introverted person in sales, and you don't want to put an extroverted person in back office accounting. Okay? Just as an example. And there are tools, they're like assessment tests, answer this question, solve this scenario, and so on. There are other tools that are used to determine integrity. So, is this person likely to hide things, to lie, to pretend? And those tools are actually quite accurate. There are tools that also predict empathy. Okay? So, many times when you go for, especially some of these online recruiting platforms, where they say, okay, answer the next 20 questions or 30 questions, many of them have a psychometric element behind them. And like I said, like all artificial intelligence, they're becoming better and better and more accurate. So these things are already happening.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have 3 more options, 3 more individuals for questions, please. 3. You can use the microphones at the various hours, please. So 3 individuals. 3, okay. We'll start with you, ma'am. Please, the microphone to your left. 2 more. Remember working with time, so 2 more, okay. So the microphone to your right. Then we'll have 1 person left. So you just simply say yours when she's done. Please go on. You have the mic.
Thank you to everyone who spoke today. I really learned a lot. But my question is directed to Mr. Tolu. He wanted to talk about attributes that employers look out for in people they want to hire, but he kind of jumped it. So I would want him to please repeat it.
Okay, it seems there's quite a lot of interest in the job market. What employers are looking for depends on the job itself, the role itself. So employers want somebody who's going to add value to a specific role. So attributes are going to change from role to role. And let's be clear, there are some roles where the employer is not really looking for somebody with somebody who is nice. Okay? I spent a lot of time in the financial services sector. If you're going to hire a currency dealer, you don't want somebody who's nice. You want somebody who's nasty, who will negotiate and will make you feel bad so that you'll make more money for the bank. Okay? So it depends on the role. The role determines the person hiring. Now, interviewing is something I wanted to talk about, but I didn't have a lot of time. And interviewing is a big problem because most people who are recruiting are very bad at interviewing. And what happens in interviews is, subconsciously, there's what is called implicit bias. We are biased very often and we don't even know we're biased. Okay? And what implicit bias does in an interview situation is the person interviewing is looking for somebody similar to him or her. And or somebody he likes, he or she likes or doesn't like. So what the interviewer is doing subconsciously is, I like this person, I don't like this person. And usually they would have made that decision very quickly in the interview. And they're just asking questions to try and prove their point. See, I said I didn't like this person. All right? So implicit bias plays a strong role. And that is why technology is good when it comes to interviews. Robots don't have that bias. Once you've given them the parameters, this is what we're looking for, they will give you the best candidate based on those parameters. But having said that, there's still going to be an interview phase at some point. So if we're looking for jobs, bear that in mind that, yes, you must know your material. Yes, you must be able to answer questions, but the person at the other end is making a judgment call on whether he or she likes you or not. That's why you have to dress well, look good, smile, pretend you are intelligent, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, sir. Yes, the next question.
So we have one more person left.
Good afternoon. Thank you to all the panelists. All right, my question is with regards to the emotional test. Okay, you talked about, sir, the test tools that test this emotional intelligence. Okay, my question is, I believe or I think if an employee knows that, okay, you are testing me for this employee might manipulate his or her answers. Is there a way for employers to test for this emotional intelligence aside these tools? Because you're asking them questions. An employee can decide to tell a lie, and in that case, the judgment or the result will be wrong. So are there other ways that employers can test for this emotional intelligence? Thank you.
It's a very good question. I've actually seen it, okay? Some of these psychometric tools, candidates are very smart and they sort of know what these tools are trying to do and they try and game them. Okay, I had one particular instance where I had a standard tool called DISC. It's actually a very good tool where I use, especially for very junior people coming into the bank, and it's mainly to find out whether they're very assertive, whether they're very compliant, and so on. So you want to put a very assertive person who enjoys interaction with other people. You want to put them in a sales role. You want to put a very compliant person in an operational role where he or she will be in a room, the whole day. So there was this lady who had joined the bank for about a year, and she was in what in banking is called clearing, those people who deal with checks. And clearing is a very operational role, and in fact, they have to work night shift because they have to go take the checks to CBN for clearing and so on. And it's very detailed, very operational. But this lady was all this jumping up and down, hey, hi girl, blah, 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 blah. So I called her one day and I said, why are you clearing? And she said, what do you mean? I said, your personality, you're clearly very extroverted, you like interacting with people and so on and so forth. She said, I knew that if I answered honestly, you people will put me in marketing. So I told the computer what it needed to hear. So yes, people can game these tools. However, the tools are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they are asking questions in a way that you, unless you are a psychologist or you understand to a really profound depth what the objective of some of these questions are, is becoming more and more difficult. And sometimes the interaction will be about talking to a computer. So it's watching things like your contraction of your eyes and how you blink and whether you look left or right. You know, when you're answering a question, you tend to look up. If you are looking to the left, it means you're making something up. And if you're looking to the right, it means you're trying to remember something. So things like that. There's no way you would know normally unless you have studied these things. So the computers are getting much more sophisticated. And then there are other things like integrity tests. Banks used to be quite good at doing that without you knowing. So for example, after the interview and they've got finalists, 5 people, and they'll give them all transport money. They say, the transport money is 5,000, count it. And in all of them, they will put 5,500. If anybody returns the 500, they pass the integrity test. Okay? So there are various ways, but the machines are the best at doing it in such a way that you won't even know.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the last person, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. Last person, the last slot for the questions. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Okay, please, a round of applause. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions, and thank you so much, our panelists, for your answers as well. So, over to you, Ms. Bumi.
Okay, we've come to the end of this program. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you, panelists, for those insightful, educative sessions. We've gained a lot, a lot. Okay, but before we go, I would like to invite Ms. Tejiri upstage to give the closing vote of thanks and prayer. Please, a round of applause as she comes in.
Ms. Tejiri, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tejiri.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I just want to say a big thank you. She has said the thank yous already, so thank you again. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you for honoring us with your presence, for taking out time to be with us today. Friends of Safe Hands, we want to say thank you very much. Thank you so, so much for being here with us today. We really, really appreciate your presence, and we don't take it for granted. Thank you, everyone, for taking out time to not just register for this program, but for being here with us. We really, really do appreciate your presence. And thank you for those of you that have joined the session online. We really appreciate it. As the last time I checked, I saw that we had 43 views. So thank you for that. We really appreciate your presence. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everything. This is a faith-based school, so we're just going to bow our heads in prayer as we close the session. In Jesus' name. Father, we thank you for the success of today's program. Thank you, Lord, for taking over. Thank you for every one of us who have been able to make it here today. As we return to our various destinations, please guide us and protect us. Be with us in the name of Jesus Christ. Father, we pray for more grace and we pray for higher levels of achievements in our individual lives and in Safe Hands School. In Jesus Christ's precious name we have prayed. Okay, we're having a photo session with the panelists and the friends of Safe Hands. So please just be patient. Thank you so much once again.
Please, yes, you can come on stage, please, for the photo shot quickly. And the individuals that want various prizes, please just stay behind, so we'll get to see you and speak with you at once.